Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Motivate with Coach Camp. I, of course, am your host, Coach Camp, and we are down here in these incredible studios of SRP with Mr. Derek Michaud. All right, so let's jump into what we're going to talk about today. So if you guys been following, then you know the last 2 Mondays we've been covering Gen Z. And we had 2 incredible young ladies on, great stories, hopefully giving you some hope for the future, knowing that things are going to be just fine, that there are plenty of people out there doing big things at all ages. Well, obviously, I want to balance that some. So I want to get the perspective of a young man. And I've got some history with this guy. So it's kind of cool because I was actually his instructor. I got to watch him grow, not just as a medical professional, but as a person as well. And I know a lot about his history, his story here in Memphis. And so we're going to talk about all that. We're going to dive deep into it. My guest this week is going to be Mr. Grant Reid. I'm looking forward to hearing his story. I know you guys are as well. But I've got to ask you, stick around for just a few seconds. We're going to take a quick break for my sponsors. Hello, everybody. I just wanted to have a quick second to let you guys know how much it means to me that you are my sponsor. SRP Studios, The Real Hernando, The Rhythm Section, Hardwick, Heating, Cooling, and Air Quality, Estes, Grading, Hodge Homes, Adair, Honey Farm, Miss Hippie Eats, Phones R Us, Ross, Sod Farms and Landscaping, Ivy Rain, Women's Clinic, Tonic POS by Tyler Young, and Coffee Central. Thank you guys so much for being a sponsor. If you'd like to be a sponsor, go to my website now, motivatecoachcamp.com, and click on the button. Thank you. All right, welcome back. Thank you so much for that. Look, I gotta send a shout out to my sponsors. Those people are help. That's the lights. You see the lights? I've got to keep these things on. Those are the ones that help me do it. So without further ado at this time, Mr. Grant Reid, welcome to the Motivate with Coach Camp podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming down, man. Is this your first one?
Yes.
Well, look, I'm going to tell you can stop after this. You've reached the top of the mountain.
Absolutely.
I'm just kidding. All right, so look, let's jump into a little bit about who Grant Reid is. So where did you grow up?
I grew up here in Memphis.
Okay.
I went to a private school, Harding Academy. Parents are divorced. Dad lives in Arkansas. So
how old were you when that happened?
God, I was 2, 3.
Oh, so you're a little guy.
Yeah, I was little. Didn't really know what was going on. Both parents were remarried. So I have family in Arkansas, family here in Memphis.
Okay.
Both families are, well, my mom's side spread out. So I've been traveling family.
Did you have brothers, sisters growing up?
I have a stepsister. Yes. You
have a stepsister. Older or younger?
Older.
Okay.
Older.
And so growing up, what was life like then having a split family? Because you started out, that's all you knew then. At two years of age, you don't really know a lot. So as you get older and have memories, the memories are of 2 different households.
Yeah. It was a positive and a negative.
Okay.
Of course, as a younger kid, 2 Christmases, 2 Thanksgivings.
Sure.
I mean, you get to see a bunch of family, but then getting older, you have the time aspect of everyone wants to spend more time with you. You want to spend more time with everyone else. And then once you grow a little bit more, get your own car, you want to go see your friends, do your things.
That's true.
And that was difficult too, with that balance. And
yeah,
I'm a big trying to keep everyone happy person, almost to a fault.
Yeah.
And that sometimes burnt me.
I think that characteristic is common with people that they don't want to feel like they're ostracized.
Yeah.
So they want to make everybody happy. And you obviously, as a young person, that could be a challenge, but I think that also will play into your character. We'll find out as we continue. So as you got older, I don't want to jump too far ahead here, but then also you also have the aspect of your wife and her family at some point. And so then you got 3 families to go around too.
Absolutely.
And by the time your Thanksgivings are with, you've gained 75 pounds.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And her family lives in Wisconsin.
Oh, wow.
It's a 11-hour drive. So that's another consideration is trying to make everyone happy with. We have a 9-hour drive. You can't do that in a weekend.
No, I mean, that's a tough haul.
Yeah, it is, especially with a 1-year-old. So
before we dive into your family, your deep part on that part, let's back up just a little bit. So you're growing up and you talk about that you have to kind of share time with 2 different sets of families, which is, that's something a lot of people grow up with. So that's not a unique situation, unfortunately, but it's something very relatable to a lot of people here in America and probably all around the world, I'd imagine. So when you're doing this, do you have some people in your life that are major influences?
My grandfather was a big one.
Okay.
I spent time with them during the summers as well when I was with my mom. That was a lot. I look up to my grandfather a lot. I have a few men in my life who I looked up to. They've come and gone. I've started to respect and also look up to my parents more just as I mature as well. Of course, you look up to your parents in some extent, but like you understand some of the reasons why they did what they did and stories, and there's always three sides to a story.
Yeah.
And you always learn their reasonings and you find more out as you grow up.
Yeah, it's interesting how time, if you're paying attention, I don't want to be too general on this, but if you're paying attention, time does bring clarity. All right. People talk about time will heal all wounds, but time also will bring better understanding.
Mm-hmm.
It's perspective. It's the idea of experience.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just face it, and I think this is really going to play well to the whole premise of this series I put together about Gen Z, is that sometimes we are limited by our own experiences and our own understanding of stuff. It's
Mm-hmm.
not that a young person would choose to be, let me just say, disgruntled, or they push back, or they don't want to agree. It's just they don't understand. So what you're saying, though, is that level of maturity that comes with time.
Absolutely.
So you talk about talking to your grandfather. He come from a different generation. How old, do you mind me asking how old he is?
He's passed away now. He'd
Okay.
be in his, I think, mid-90s. Could be wrong. Early 90s, mid-90s. Could be wrong. He's passed away, I think, 4 years now. 3 or 4 years now. It's been a minute.
So
Yes, sir.
I asked that because, what did he experience? Well, it sounds like to me he probably grew up, and I know he grew up through World War II, that
Mm-hmm.
time frame. Obviously, he was around during the 40s, 50s, 60s.
Mm-hmm.
He probably saw the maybe even firsthand the civil rights fight. And there's just so many things that took place in history, in life, in America. And a person like that experiences those things, they're able to pass that on.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a young individual, how old were you when you started picking up some of these pearls of wisdom from him?
I remember going out to his garden when I was 5, 6, working with his hands. Me and him would go out and walk in the woods, and he did everything. He was a falconer at one point in time.
Oh, wow.
He was a doctor. He was in the Army. He did a lot, and he was a big woodworker. We actually have some toys for our kid that he's made.
Wow.
I enjoyed watching the process and learning and all of that.
Yeah. So I bring up those things because what we all would agree to, I think, that watches the show and that they're living life,
Mm-hmm.
is that we will emulate and we will take on people that are close to us that we look up to, and we
Mm-hmm.
find them as a mentor. And a lot of times, if it is somebody that has experience, years on them, and you're actually paying attention, man, that can be really beneficial. And that will play into the person you will eventually become. And a lot of times, and I say this personally, me talking about me at this point, is I'm picking up stuff from folks that I don't realize I am actually submitting to my conscious. And then eventually I find myself emulating those things to try to be a better person. So your granddad obviously had a lot of experiences, came from a tough time in America. And I would imagine if you're spending that kind of time with him, he's definitely putting those pieces to you. So as you start to get older, let's go mid-teens, late teens, what are you thinking that you want to do for a living?
So first, I started my careers at 16, or working at 16.
Started working at 16.
With my hands. I started a moving company. I did lawns.
Bless your heart, because I ain't down with moving stuff, but go ahead.
I also worked in a restaurant just to make extra money. And I think a lot of that was, I enjoy working with my hands. I enjoy working. And so that progressed into me. And another thing, my grandfather took really good care of his family.
Okay.
He provided very well. And to me, working's also providing.
Mm-hmm.
And so that led to me working with my hands, doing stuff I like, outside work. I ran my own lawn companies. I worked for people. I would go to estate sales and stay there and just offer to move furniture for people.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Man, I'm moving my mom's stuff right now. That's a special breed of person that wants to move stuff. I ain't kidding
Absolutely.
you. Well, look, and to be fair for everybody out there that don't know, but because you're on camera, how tall are you? 6'4"?
6'5".
6'5", big fella. I mean, strong, obviously, coming up. You probably shot up in your teens, I would imagine. Big, strong kid. When you were doing those things, you were building work ethic. Now, how much of that work ethic would you say you could assign to watching your granddad over the years?
A lot. And also it goes back to like my parents being divorced. My mom didn't have a man of the household. So
You had to grow up early.
I had help a lot with cutting the grass. I helped in the yard. I was the extra pair of hands to help.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, then these things all blend to the person that you're starting to become. Gen Z, you know, it's easy to kind of like group an entire generation together and see a handful of people that are not doing things the way they should be doing them and start to think that our next generation's lost. Let's face it, too. We also live in a time where there's so much social media, and it's real easy to get a jaded perspective of what the world looks like. But it's really a small microcosm of what's going on, because when I hear your story, and just for everyone out there that doesn't know, and I'm going to blend this obviously to the rest of the story here in a minute, was that Grant was one of my students in school. I taught him advanced EMT. I was also there with him through Paramedic. And when he came into the class, man, I can tell you that he had focus, he had determination, he was working hard. Part of the 3 pieces of success that I just recently spoke on to a high school was the 3 ingredients you have to have is hard work, determination, and self-discipline. Clearly, you were developing the hard work aspect of things, and you embraced it. And you understood that because seeing your mom work hard and be a single mom, you had to kind of take the role on earlier than probably you would have liked to, of being the man of the house. Yeah. And so all of those things play into it, but you're not unique in the sense that that happens all across America, like we said. So building yourself, you're also building your future. When was it you decided, once you got to a certain age, that you wanted to do something different than just moving furniture?
I moved furniture for a while, and then I also did handyman stuff. It started to be friends' parents. Hey, can you do this? Absolutely, I can do that for you.
Opportunities. You were looking for opportunities.
I will take an opportunity in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And that moved into me doing handyman stuff. So I started doing handyman stuff, did that for 3 years, still move furniture sometimes. I have a hard time saying no to a job opportunity.
Yeah.
And now that it's grown to have a really good friend at the fire department who was kind of my mentor with Paramedic. He did my FTO, he did all that, and we've started a business together now.
Okay.
That, and once again, I have a hard time not taking opportunities. I've started a rental business as well out in Arkansas, which is where my dad is, and spending time out there, I kind of know the area.
So talking about that right there, when you get to that point where you decide that you want to go into fire and EMS, what was the inspiration there?
Boy Scouts.
Really?
I'm an Eagle Scout.
I ain't gonna lie to you. I did not expect that. And an Eagle Scout that's a big resume bullet.
Yes.
I mean, how long did that take you to get there?
I mean, it takes you 17, 18 years. I mean, I was one of the ones that dragged my feet and waited till the last day. Because like we said earlier, when you get your own vehicle, it's hard to stay focused sometimes, but I got it done before I turned 18. So
that's the deal. And forgive me, I never was in the Boy Scouts, so I don't know the ranks of how it works. So when you start out, you have until you turn 18 to achieve this.
Yes, sir.
And what's the average time for a person?
There were people in my Boy Scouts that did it by the time they were like 15, 16.
Wow.
But they were a little more dedicated to Scouts than I was. I was trying to make money, have friends. It kind of got to the point where I don't want to be told I have to go once a week. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, distractions.
And so it can be done way quicker, for sure.
So here's the thing, though, that you should know about, and this is coming from somebody who wasn't in the Boy Scouts, but what I do know about it is it takes a lot of time, perseverance, hard work. And in the end, it has to be something that you centrally focus on, and that takes self-discipline.
Absolutely.
And so you were talking about some of the distractions that came up, but I think that's key because you kept retooling yourself back to that to eventually achieve that thing that's really hard to do. I don't know what the percentage of people are that go into Scouts that get Eagle Scout, but I would imagine it's pretty low.
Yeah.
It's not a ton. It's not everybody that goes into Boy Scouts for sure. So then those things are also building the person that you're becoming.
Yes.
And you're able to manage a lot of different things. So you're juggling a lot of balls, if you will. So that's a lot of people too. But at the end of the day, the Gen Zers, I think sometimes the older generation, and I know this because I'm in the older generation, they talk about how they don't see the young people with the same work ethic and they're not doing this. And I'm like, you're not talking to the right kids. And I'm sorry I call you kid, but when you get to be my age and it takes you 5 minutes to get right when you stand up, you understand one day.
Oh, absolutely.
So you guys are working just as hard as any other generation. Maybe it just looks different, but ultimately you have the focus, you have the dedication. And so you're in the Eagle Scouts. And what does somebody say to you? Hey, you should join the fire department.
So it started with, actually, I was in college. I went for a dual degree, landscape architecture and contracting.
Okay.
I did my first summer internship, and I decided it wasn't for me. I decided it might have just been the internship, a lot of sitting behind a desk. I enjoyed the design process and using my imagination. And my summer internship was more of a cut and dry, this is what we're going to do, not much imagination. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but went back to school, wasn't doing well with school, and I actually started before I got asked to leave college. That
you got a new invite. It was a different invite.
I started looking into classes on EMS, and I just wanted more.
How old were you at that time?
18, 19.
Okay. So fresh out of high school.
Yes. I'd only been in 2 semesters of college at this point.
Okay.
I was finishing up my third, and I really wanted just to have that knowledge.
Yeah. And
got the letter. It was heartbreaking. But then I was like, I want to go back to school. I want to go to EMS. I want to, if I can make a career out of helping people and being there for people, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I went and did that. I didn't follow the traditional path of going straight through the 3 ranks of EMS.
That for anyone watching that doesn't know, because if you're not in EMS, that's EMT basic, advanced EMT, and then paramedic.
Yes. I had my basic for about 4 years. Didn't use it for my first year. Helped my dad out on a project he was doing, construction. Really just wasn't doing much. And then had someone come up to me and say, hey, you got to get your stuff together. You don't have insurance. You're getting on up there in age. Like, it's time to start thinking about this stuff. So I went and joined a private company and did that for a few years.
Like a private ambulance service. Okay.
And got burnout doing that. That's not what I went to school for.
So like age 22, you jump back into EMS.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. 21, 22. And I decided to go to AMT school, pursue a career in a fire department. Got on the fire department, went to AMT school, loved it.
All right, well, pause there for just a second, because I want to put some things out. Whenever my guests put a bunch of things into a bag, I got to take it back out of the bag, unpack it, and then give a little message on it, because it made a lot of sense, some things you said. First of all, I like to connect these dots for my guests. Sometimes they have that aha moment. It's like, I never even thought about that, but that's obviously how it happened. The reason I also like to do that is because somebody out there right now is watching, and they may be in that phase where they're doing something and they're not recognizing why they're able to do that or why they should do that, whatever that is. So here's what I hear. As you're growing up and you have a strong influence of a person that has a great work ethic, that being your grandfather, and he puts things into you that allows you to be confident as a person as you're growing, but then also has that ethical drive to work. You want to work. You enjoy work. That's a good thing. So then whenever you get a little older and you start trying some stuff and you're all of a sudden now you're out driving, you get distracted, but you're like, hey, look, my goal was to be an Eagle Scout. You're able to come back to that and become an Eagle Scout. Well, now here you are outside of high school and you go into some programs. And this is so important. And this is why I wanted to hit pause on this, because a lot of my guests that are Gen Z, and I have a lot of younger people. I have a lot of young people that follow me. They're in high school right now. And this message is very important for them. You weren't afraid to try stuff. You didn't know if you would like it, but you knew you needed to do something, and you wanted to just see what was out there and attempt to see what would fit. I did the same thing. Okay. I was in the military. I did a lot of stuff that later I realized I really didn't like that, but man, I got something from it. I was always learning, even if it wasn't the thing I was going to do, I was picking up something from it. And so here you are, you go into college and you do some stuff that's not your mojo, and you realize that. Would you ever have known that that absolutely wasn't your mojo if you didn't do it? Maybe not. And then you're sitting around wondering, you're thinking, should I regret not trying that? But you didn't. You tried it. And then you realize that's not for me. And then when you're given some bad decision, or not bad decision, but some bad news, if you will, about, hey, look, we're going to invite you to not come back to school. Instead of letting that be, and this is so important, and that's why I had to hit the hard pause on this, instead of that being the dagger to the heart and the person saying, man, everybody's against me. I'm a victim. I can't do anything. and then just melting into self-loathing and giving up, you wanted to retool. And you had a friend in your life, you said, that kind of gave you a little bump in the butt and said, dude, time's passing, you got to do something. Yeah. We all need that. We all need that person to say, hey, look, snap out of it. Let's get moving again. And so they mentioned to you, you were already got your EMT basic, and you say, all right, I should probably use this. I've been working with my dad. I need to do this. So you try it with a private service, not your mojo. By the way, I feel you on that.
Yeah.
I did one 12-hour shift on a private service, and I said, no, I'm going back to 911.
Yep.
So, and it's okay for people that like the private service.
Absolutely.
We need you.
Yes.
Because not everybody wants to do that. Trust me.
No.
So when you make the decision to come into AMT school, when you know that you had the prior failure, what's on your mind?
So I joined the fire department, and I wanted to be more of a part. I wanted to be more helpful. My great friend now was there at the time, brought me up under it. With EMS, a lot of times you're being taught stuff and learning how to do new things, and I wanted to be able to do them. I wanted to be able to help. I wanted to be able to run the calls. I wanted to be the guy who said, hey, we need to do this, not that.
Yeah.
So that pushed me to go back to AEMT school. Also, my end goal was paramedic.
So you went in, were you on a fire department at that time?
Yes, I was.
Which one did you get on?
Bartlett.
So they didn't require you to get your paramedic?
No, at the time, we were not required.
So you go into it and you're already thinking, though, you want to get your paramedic.
Absolutely.
And I always got to back up a little bit sometimes so that the audience members out there that don't know our lifestyle, and especially in Shelby County in particular, I can't say worldwide or even nationwide for that matter, there are departments that require you to have your paramedic license within a certain amount of time after being hired. Bartlett at that time was not one of those, but you're already thinking you want to get your paramedic.
Yes.
So then talk to me about your experience in advanced and how much your one teacher was really awesome.
Advanced school's a struggle to me. Struggled through high school. I do not do well with tests. I think most of the people in our career don't do well with school. There's a reason we're firefighters.
Hands-on folks,
Yeah. So nerve-wracking. Got through AEMT pretty well. Terrified for paramedic school because everyone talks about how hard paramedic school, and by all means, they're correct.
It is hard. If it was easy, would it be an accomplishment?
Yeah.
No.
And everyone would do it. But AEMT, I finally kind of saw that light, kind of hey, I can do some stuff now.
You had a win.
Yeah.
You're like, I did that.
Absolutely. And at the department, it wasn't normal for AEMTs to take calls or run calls. And I said, I want to run calls. I have my license. I can do it per the state. I want to run calls.
What was your colleagues thinking when you said this?
Mixed bag.
Okay.
We had to find some stuff out about, all the run types and all this stuff that goes into.
What the limitations might be for your license level.
Absolutely. But thanks to my peers and kind of pushing for me, and
if it fell within your scope,
it was
like, Grant, here you go.
Absolutely.
Now, look, that's an important aspect, too, because that's showing initiative toward your goal. Sometimes I think people like the idea of a goal, and even if they put some work in toward it, once that so-called rubber hits the road, it's easy to feel gun-shy. But you were willing to embrace that moment as somebody that was not as trained, obviously, as a paramedic and have some of those insecurities. So talk to me about how maybe your past played into that leadership role that you were taking.
My grandfather was the leader of our family. We all looked up to him. My Eagle Scout journey, I was in charge of patrol leader, which is when you're the head kid, I guess you could say. Multiple times. I had multiple ranks throughout Boy Scouts. I enjoyed teaching. I love teaching. I like working with people. I like going, hey, that was a good shot, but next time let's try this, and working through it with people.
Constructive criticism.
Absolutely.
Not destructive criticism, which a lot of people get confused.
Yes. I just enjoy the teaching. I enjoy being there for people. I enjoy being the person talking to the families, trying to calm or say, hey, we gotta go.
Yeah.
Also, I like putting myself out there. I enjoy pucker factor.
So what you're saying is pushing yourself out of your comfort zone.
Yes.
I have a whole nother speech line that I do about that, but continue, sir, because that is so relevant to growing.
And it's funny because actually when I told my wife I was going to do this, she's like, you hate public speaking. And I was like, yeah, but it's Coach Camp.
Well, there's that. And look, it's just you and I. Nobody else in the world.
Absolutely, yeah.
Except for the other several million. But other than that, no one else is here. Yeah.
But I enjoy that. And that's another thing that pushed me to EMS. I like that, not knowing what you're going to get. I like hey, I got to figure out what's going on
right
now.
When I talk to kids too, I just spoke at a high school yesterday. Respectively, I know this is going to be like in the past whenever this is airing, but when I spoke to the kids, that was kind of one of the things I spoke about was, put yourself in a position where you have to make decisions and you've got to push yourself out of your comfort zone. I said, as a paramedic, I never had the option of showing up on a scene, looking at it and being like, ooh, this looks really bad. You know what, guys? I don't know what to do here. Good luck. And hopefully everything works out, and then leave the scene. Not an option.
Nope.
You got to figure it out. And I think that's life to a T.
Yes.
You're going to face things a lot of times that maybe you're not familiar with, you've never seen, you've never had before. Throwing the towel in is not an option.
No.
You got to take a step back sometimes, get your breath, figure it out, but you got to keep trying to find a way to move forward.
Yes.
Now, you've clearly, at this point, we've built a great picture of how Grant has put all these little building blocks along the way that were significant to getting you to where you are. So at the age of what did you go into paramedic school? How old were you when you decided to make that move?
24. I've been a paramedic for almost a year, and school's about a year. So, when I made the decision to go, though,
So like right after advanced, like how old were you when you like left advanced and then first day of paramedic school? That's
Probably
what I want to know.
24.
24. Were you married at that time?
Yes.
Okay. So how many years before that were you married?
We got married. Put me on the spot here.
Sorry. You ain't got to say the year if you just know how old you are. That way you're not in trouble. I don't want to get you in trouble. 22. Were you married before you went into AMT school?
Yes.
That's where I'm going with this.
Okay.
So then, with that being said, it's not just a Grant decision. This is a Grant plus wife decision. How was she as far as like your decision to go towards EMS and fire?
Super supportive.
Okay.
Of course, family members don't like the idea of us running into fires and then we come home.
Well, that's kind of why I asked. I didn't know what her mindset was.
Yes, but she liked the idea of me following my dream of paramedic. Very supportive through AMT, very supportive through paramedic. Absolutely. We did all the things they tell you not to do. We got a house during AMT or just before. We had a kid during paramedic school.
Yeah, they tell you don't do those big life moments.
Yeah, we did them all.
And we always have plenty of students that do the big life moments.
I was one of them. So, she took over for me. She allowed me to focus on school. She really, really stepped up to let me do what my dream was. Yeah,
and that's so critical a lot of times for people to have that person in their corner they don't count on. It doesn't have to be a spouse. It could be a friend. It could be a brother, sister. It doesn't matter, but you need people in your life. Look, I've said this so many times on my show, was that usually, I can't say it's 100% guaranteed, but usually people don't get somewhere in life by themselves. They need some folks to support them, help them. Look, I will tell you now, I have friends now that I never hear from them. And it's whenever I started this journey. But now I've also got a new circle of people that are very supportive of what I do. And so even in different phases of your life, you're not always going to have the same people there that had your back at one other time versus another. But it's so important if you do have a spouse that is on board, especially with this type of career field. And that's one of the things I would offer out there to everyone is, everybody has their own way of figuring out who their partner's going to be. But for me, the first time I met my wife now, and she was very supportive of the crazy harebrained ideas I had, even if she had some trepidation, and she may have voiced that, I knew I had that teammate that I needed. So that's important. So then you get into paramedic school, and I know it was a challenge for you. I was there. So talk a little bit about how you were able to work past some of those moments that maybe you thought you should give up and throw the towel in.
My wife was a big part of it.
Okay.
I did very well in basic, and that just that drive of, hey, I got through something I couldn't get through before already. I feel a lot on my peers. One of them, which teaches at the school as well, I studied with them. And I'm one of the guys, once again, who can't read a book. But I can sit down and have a conversation with you, and I'll learn so much more from sitting down, having a conversation, going over all the topics and stuff we have. And I mean, that was it.
I know when we go to lab and I would teach you skills, you did pick the skills up relatively quickly.
Yes.
And I was always surprised when I found out that you were having some struggles in the academic side of things, and you were having to fight through it. I was like, wow, he's so good over there. But that speaks now so much more to me, understanding that is where your mojo is.
Yes.
Hands-on, give you some information, let you practice it. Got it.
Yes.
So let me ask you this. So we've kind of built the idea of who Grant is, how hard you had to work, how you've gotten to where you are, because now we know you're married, you have a kid, and you're working on the fire department. We're going to talk about your other jobs here in just a second, that multi-layer that we all do a lot of times. So we know you're managing a family. You just have one kid?
Yes.
One kid right now. How old?
He's 13 months.
13 months. Seems like yesterday. I remember the Facebook pictures of you holding this brand new little baby. So, man, a year went by quick.
He's a big baby now.
Wow. And overnight, it seems like.
Oh, my gosh.
So here we are, generationally speaking, Gen Z. And this was the highlight I wanted to hit. And so if you haven't had a chance to check out the two ladies before you, very similar traits in the fact that they had great influences that helped push them. And then they found that energy and power within them to push themselves out of their comfort zone, which is a common thread, I think, across the board for all generations. Here's one thing that I would ask you. So here, I'm a paramedic.
Yes.
And I'm a Gen X, and when I went through paramedic school, a lot of the same struggles as far as the academic side of things, balancing family, balancing clinicals, going to school, work, everything. You know, you've got this immense pressure and limited time to get things done and to stay on top of everything you're trying to do. So that is not different. So whenever you look at a generation and you see, all right, well, they're paramedics, we have cops, we have construction workers, you know, we have entrepreneurs. From one generation to the next, that doesn't change. Maybe the jobs evolve, but those stresses, those pressures, the challenges, they're there. My question, and this is a tough one and a deep one for you, Grant. Why do you think one generation to the next feels like the one coming up behind it is not capable?
Because there's new struggles. Like, technology is so much more prevalent in my life. Phones, social media. I think a lot of people worry about, I think it's a worry too, now that I say that, is like, we'll look at, I have friends that have kids, and it's a worry of, I've provided all of this and I don't see you pushing as hard as I push.
That's a good point.
And it's a lot of, I don't want you to take advantage to the point where you're hurting yourself in the future. We have way more stuff distracting us now.
That's true.
And we have a lot of people that have worked really hard to give their family what they have. And I think a lot of it's a worry of, I want you to be as good or better than me, because we always want our kids to be more successful, be happier, you name it. And I think it's almost a worry, and that's just how it's put out there. I don't know if they're going to be as well as us, but I think it's more of a worry of, and also you're more mature looking down at younger people. You've made those mistakes. You've seen the outcomes. I think it's an experience thing too. That's
very wise. Obviously, the further down the road you get, the easier it is to see a problem. That's where that art of anticipation comes, where you can see the road they're on and know what it's going to look like at the end. And when you're young, you don't know what that looks like. And a lot of times, I can speak personally, even when I was growing up, somebody could give you the great advice, but you can't see what they know. And you think it's going to be different for you. But then only to find out it wasn't different, because that's the way the road ends, whatever that is. It could be drugs, alcohol, it could be distractions, women, you name it. There's 1,000 things out there. But you pointed out a few things, and that's what I like to get my guest thought process and just honest opinion. It's just an opinion because there's no right, wrong, fact, not fact situation here. But you're right. There are more distractions. It's faster, easier distractions, and it's the phone. Let's just be honest. It's the phone. It's the social media. Growing up, we had and I'm talking about my generation, 5 channels, and, 2 of them were fuzzy. So we didn't have a lot on our TV, so we stayed outside playing, which also caused us to have to problem solve more. Because when you had problems outside, you didn't want to go run and grab mom and dad every time, whatever that was. You had to figure out how to get through an argument. You couldn't just text and then turn your phone off and then be done with the conversation. So there are all those aspects. And so when I talk to some folks, and this is the thing too, this is what got me on the path of Gen Z, was having conversations with other generations, whether it was an older person that was in their 80s down to little kids that are 12. Because I do a thing with Hope Center, and it's a bunch of youth. And it's from 6th grade to 12th grade. And listening to their concerns and maybe their problem-solving techniques, I started realizing there are common threads that span the test of time. That are always going to be the same. I don't think it's going to change. But then there are those nuances like social media that create this distraction or create this image that can taint or really be very detrimental to that generation coming up. And so I was speaking to some other Gen Zs, that's the majority of my students. Some of them have denounced social media. They don't use any of it.
That's awesome.
They don't look at any of it, which I thought was fascinating because it's so easy to be drawn into that. But here's the thing that I see. You guys facing all of those extra distractions versus seeing that as a negative. I think those that learn to navigate that will have a unique strength that my generation never had. You guys are, for those that can step around these extra problems, not only will that better prepare you for life, but that's going to help you better prepare the next generation coming behind you. So rather than always look at the negative, and that's what people do, and that's why I started this podcast, Motivate with Coach Camp, is because it's about positivity. Start finding the good in the moment. And I think that we've pretty much nailed that with you, sir, about how you can use those past experiences to the now experiences to grow the next experiences. And that's what you're doing. All right, so some misconceptions here. Let me see if I can I don't have my glasses. I wrote down a handful of Q&A. I don't usually do a script. People know this about me. I don't do a script, but every once in a while, there'll be some things I don't want to forget. I don't want to squirrel on it. So some of the misconceptions is that the images and the population and the influences will also expand your exposure. To be honest, population's always going to grow. It's just going to continue to expand, which means there's going to be more people. There's going to be other opportunities. So tell me about how some of the changes you could see as a Gen Z that you can bring now that will influence the next generation.
Changes I see now that influence the next generation. Well, technology is looked at as a bad thing, but it can also be looked at as an amazing thing.
True.
I learned a lot of different techniques on how to do things in our field off TikTok, Facebook, different ways to look at things. You can change a transmission looking at YouTube. Absolutely. I've done a lot of YouTube work.
See, that's what I'm saying. It's like the ability to have information is at your fingertips that we didn't have. You had to go to the library and look up an encyclopedia.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's building also a lot of people that are willing to try to do things themselves because they can look it up on YouTube. You can look anything up on YouTube. I mean, I think it can be good for sure. I think technology's obviously come a far way and helped a lot of people. And if you use it right.
If you use it right.
Yes.
I think that is the yin and yang of life, don't you?
Absolutely.
Everything has a positive or a negative. Yes. It's what direction do you lean toward? And that could be everything. I mean, you think about when Blockbuster came around, you probably weren't born when Blockbuster.
It was still around.
It was okay. So when it came around, it was like revolutionary, but it damaged people going to the movies, going to movies. Then all of a sudden you move to DVD. Well, that kills the VHS tape. And then whenever the Redbox comes around, well, that kills Blockbuster. And then Netflix comes around and you can stream and that kills Redbox. So there are the things that are convenient that will be better for consumers, but not always better for certain businesses. Absolutely. So I'm just just trying to relate those things to, yes, good and bad can come from everything. I asked that question, though, about what you want to leave behind because the next question is a lot more personal. Okay. And that is, we just discussed you have a 1-year-old.
Yes.
So as a dad, and as a Gen Z, and as somebody sitting in time right now that you see what all's going on around you, you have that perspective of the past thanks to your granddad. What do you hope to be able to do to guide your son as he gets older?
I hope I can be what my grandfather was to me. I hope I can teach him to be a positive young man, treat people right. That's a big thing. To want to provide, there's a fine line in wanting to provide and going over the top, which I think I struggle with. A lot of people struggle with.
We do.
And I mean, just be there for his family. Don't forget about your family. I mean, my wife was in my corner the whole time. We actually met in college before all of this started. She's always been there.
She's been on the ride with you the whole time.
Absolutely. And that's just key. Just trying your best to be a good person. You're not going to make everyone happy. You're not always going to be able to get the new flashy toy. You're not always going to be that person, but just do what you can and try to be the best you can be at it.
Yep. Balance is key.
Yes.
You said something there that I had to make a note on, and that is it's common to, from one generation to the next, hopefully if things are going well, you're going to do a little better than your parents did. And then your goal is to set your kids up in a direction that they're going to do a little better than you.
Yes.
And sometimes what ends up happening, and I'm guilty of it, I have a 28-year-old, 27-year-old, and about to be a 16-year-old. So in spanning some generation on that, some timeline, it was all the same. You end up doing so much for your kids, you forget to allow them to mess up. You forget to allow them to work hard because you don't want to see them struggle. And in essence, by doing that, you're creating a struggle that's probably going to come down the road.
Absolutely.
And so there's that balance of you do for them, but then you also got to have them do for themselves. You know, when I'm relating these things and I think about that parent that is, and I'm not degrading anybody, so don't take this the wrong way, that puts all these pads on their kid and training wheels, and then they make them roll in the grass and they never fall and scratch their knee, trying to learn how to ride a bicycle. In a lot of ways, it's too much. You got to let them take some knocks sometimes. And that's just relative to life. You got to let your kids take some knocks. And so when I ask you the question about how you see life now and how you see it coming with your son, I was curious as to your view of what would be most important. And you kind of hit it without me prompting you. And that's really the idea here, guys. I want you guys to get the voice of Gen Z, and that is stay true to the values that matter most, that should never change from one generation to the next. Love your family. Be there for the people close to you. Do the best you can. Work hard. Adjust to the situation, because life's going to throw a lot of things at you. And it's always going to evolve. And sometimes in evolution, there's a de-evolution. And you're going to have to adjust to that. So balance becomes the key to everything. So you're raising a 1-year-old. Fast forward 40, 30 years from now, he may be raising a 1-year-old. And the point is, from one generation to the next, those core tenets, that foundation never has to change for anyone. And when you have your focus and your lens is right, you know that you're going to have an impact that's positive on the generation coming behind you. And at times, you're going to even inspire the generation in front of you. So
absolutely.
Let's blend this too now. You've worked hard. You've got your paramedic license. You're out there grinding. But you want to expand and you want to grow. So tell me about your side business.
I had the opportunity to buy a rental property out in Arkansas. Very good opportunity. I took it and we rent it. Our current house here in Memphis, we had an opportunity to have like a mother-in-law suite type deal. I took that. And we're letting that kind of do its thing. It's not a bunch of work on us. Of course, there's times where there is. And so that's doing that thing. And me and my buddy came up with the idea to start an official business, a handyman business. It's actually a pool.
You're going back to your roots of being the handyman, full circle.
To being actually, we added pool repair into that, pool repair handyman. Something I've looked at throughout all of my side jobs is I think these big companies do people dirty with how much they charge. They can't. Absolutely. I'm not saying all of them do it. And I understand there's a lot more overhead, but my thing is coming in at a fair price that I'd be willing to pay. That doesn't knock me over when I hear it. And I try to treat people fairly, try to do the right thing. We help out wherever we can. Of course, jobs we can't do, jobs we're just not going to do as good or better than the next person, and we'll pass on those because it's not right to the person.
Yeah.
But that's doing that thing, and we're just taking it one step at a time.
So as much as you have evolved and changed over time, so much of it was still your core tenet, and that was work hard, take advantage of opportunities, and then at the base of it, have a kind heart for others. And even with your business, it sounds like that does not change. The idea of you starting the other business was to help people so that they don't get taken advantage of in situations where maybe you felt like there were times you got taken advantage of.
Absolutely.
I think that's key.
Yeah, it's and I don't want to be just a worker. I want to be someone can trust.
Sure.
I want to be someone that, yeah, you can go fix that over there real quick. Just let me know when you're done. And absolutely, I think so many people do jobs just because it's a job.
Sure. Just going through the motions.
Absolutely.
Going through the motions. Look, I think there's so much to be said for appreciating what you have and what you've accomplished and where you are in life. But then that balance to that is that you're always trying to become better. And that's the journey of life. And that's where the gift is. If you ever get to a place that you feel like you've maxed out, then you're probably at the end of your days. You should always try to push to be a little better, to have a little bit more of an impact. I know that's what we do here on this podcast. I know that that's what I do out there in the world when I'm teaching or I'm going to schools and speaking, is just trying to leave a little bit better than I found it before, whatever that thing is.
Absolutely. And I think, especially in our field as firefighter paramedics, there's some people that get jaded. It's hard not to.
Sure.
And
you see the worst of the worst.
Absolutely. And sometimes I don't think people necessarily treat people with as much respect or empathy that should be shown. And I try to do that in my field as well. I try to treat everyone like they're my family member.
Yeah. That's good. And that is not overstated. There are plenty of people out there that the job will get to them. And hey, look, I would say to those folks, pay attention to that. Maybe take a breather, because the truth is those folks don't deserve it. If you're in this career field, especially in healthcare, look, sometimes, a lot of times, it's mental health that you're helping more than the physical side of things.
Absolutely.
On a lot of the calls, the patients need somebody that acts like they care about them, because maybe that's where they're coming from, is a place where nobody felt like they cared about them. So, well, Grant, look, I think that we've covered a lot of great stuff here. The point of this series was to just give a voice and a face and some perspective to what the generation right behind me is doing, and knowing that that's going to be okay. This next generation is going to be fine. America's going to be okay. The world is going to be okay. I get it. There's a lot of crazy in the world. That's never changed. You can go all the way back to the beginning of human. That's never changed. But it is people like yourself, sir, that we need to highlight and stop focusing on all the negative. Focus on the positive. There's so much more of that. I am a true, firm believer. There's way more good people on this earth than there are bad. Sure, there are bad folks out there that want to do bad things, but there are so many more that have great hearts, that want to do the right thing for people and leave a great legacy behind. And I think you're a great example of that.
Well, I appreciate that.
What would you want to leave my guest with, if you have any final passing words as we wrap up?
I know it sounds cliche, but find what you love to do. I didn't necessarily know where I was going to find my passion. And it's out there. You're going to find something you love. It might not make you a millionaire, but it's something everyone's told me is just love what you do. Then it's not work.
Yep.
There's days where it's work. Don't get me wrong, but get up and be happy to be going to your job. Love your family. Do what you can for them. And understand you can't do everything. I had a hard time with that. I had a hard time overextending myself.
Yeah.
But find what you love to do.
Yeah.
I mean,
I've always said, make your passion your purpose and you'll find your paycheck. You can't chase the paycheck. You should chase the passion.
Absolutely.
It's great words of advice. Thank you, Grant, for coming down here, man.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So, hey, Southwest Tennessee Community College, Your best choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, to my listeners out there, I want to say thank you. Always tuning in. Some great comments last week. I know y'all have enjoyed this Gen Z series. From here, we're moving on to some other stuff, but I got news for you, man. There's going to be great content coming your way. Continue to tune in. I'm going to ask you now, go to my website, motivatewithcoachcamp.com. Subscribe to my YouTube. And until next time, Coach Camp out.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up! It's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is no friend to me. It's not working out, maybe it's